And we're live. Hello, everybody. Thank you for waiting on us. We had some technical difficulties with microphones and that kind of stuff. Today is a bit different than normal. Normal we do like 2 talks, but we're starting like a different thing with just an hour and have some cool people on here. Yesterday, big thing for us, Angular version 11. And I hope you all already looked at all the changes that are there. I was pretty excited about that one. If you have any questions, we can probably answer them on the end. If you didn't...
Otherwise, there is like the Angular party tomorrow. I think Mark can announce something about that later on.
Ooh.
This was Mark's idea. I told you guys were going to like him because he's so much fun and like is all about the community. And so I thought this was a really fun idea.
Wow. I didn't know about that.
You know, if you would stop working so much and spend more time on Twitter, Jeffrey, you would know these things.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Wait, are you saying Twitter is not work?
Well, he's been, they have him doing like all kinds of programmer stuff and development stuff, and he's onboarding people, and he's like doing other stuff besides just following the Angular community on Twitter.
Yeah, well, we'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So, but before we are going to introduce our guest, let's introduce like Bonnie. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here. I always like to crash the Dutch Angular group, and I'm very excited for you guys to meet Mark. Oh no, see, I spoiled it. I'm sorry. I'm very excited for the guest today because I've seen him on a couple of other shows, and he's super fun. So it's going to be a fun show.
Right there, so they can see him. His name is there. And his Twitter handle. So he's open for DMs though.
And this is the troublemaker panelist here.
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah, and we all know you probably.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sander. I'm the troublemaker apparently.
Yes.
And our guest speaker of tonight, it's Mark Thompson. Hi Mark, how are you doing?
I am doing so well. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, we're great to have you. Let's see. I think you already shared your screen, so let me put it up and you can start your talk.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, friends, give me a thumbs up if everything's looking good and sounding good. If that's the case, then we are ready to go, and I am so excited. This is a huge day. First and foremost, this is my first time with the Dutch Angular group, so thank you to you amazing folks for including me and making me feel so welcome. Today's session is called Angular and the Joy of Motion, and we're going to be talking about Angular animations. And let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am a developers relations engineer on the Angular team at Google. I love to code and teach. Those two things are a big passion of mine. And while working at Google is very cool, if there was another profession that I could have, I would probably be a professional cookie taster because I love cookies. One of my cookies of all time.
With a title like this, I would guess you are the Bob Ross of animations.
Well, that's like, I like that you got the reference there. But hopefully that this will be really fun for folks. Are we still seeing a lag? I'm looking at the chat here. It looks like there's still a lag here.
Yeah, but that's okay. What about the cookie?
Oh, my favorite cookie is a chocolate chip cookie. I love chocolate chip cookies. Second favorite is iced oatmeal cookies, and those are pretty amazing as well. All right, so as was alluded to before by Jeffrey, version 11 of Angular is out right now, so definitely go ahead and do that ng update core and update Angular, so that way you can update the CLI so you can get the latest goodness. A lot of really great features went into this, and as always, one of our missions is to make sure your upgrade process is really smooth. So definitely want you to go ahead and give it a try, and then share all your feedback. Let us know what you love about it. And speaking of this release, we have a launch party tomorrow. We're going to do a live stream tomorrow. It's going to be so much fun. It'll be on the official Angular YouTube channel. So you'll be able to get the live stream there. You can see our Twitter for more details. But we're going to have other team members from the tooling team, framework team, for other DevRel members. It's going to be great, and can't wait to hang out with you folks tomorrow if you can make it. All the information will be made available after the talk. Okay, wonderful. Now, let me tell you a story. This guy, this is my kid. We call him the heir, and we say he's the heir is because, you know, I'm firmly in third place in my family. I used to be in first when I was single, and then when I started a family, I lost my positioning to be in last place. So now I'm in last place, but this kid, this is the heir. And here's something that he said. He said, you know, Dad, your apps are super boring. Can you make them more fun? Now, this is really hurtful coming from a 3-year-old, but it's actually pretty true. If you think about the way that we design apps, specifically as engineers, we're not focused on making apps anything but useful. We try to focus on just creating something. And when it comes to the design and interactions, we usually say things like, yeah, it works, doesn't it? And that's normal because that's how we operate. And I'll tell you, he is definitely right. But there's a different way to think about your applications and what you can do. And today we're going to talk about animation and how you can use animation to really impact your applications. And if you want to think about animations, here's how I will consider it. One, you consider it as an OTD. All right. And what does that stand for? An opportunity to delight. Now, what does that mean? When I say opportunity to delight, I'm thinking of what are the interactions in your application that you can delight your users with? Okay, how can you give them a really special experience? And think about applications that you've ever used and the different ways that you perceive those applications. The ones that have nice interactions and a lot of times the animations, they give you lots of special cues that are really helpful for you as you're using the application. For example, think about when an app is loading. If nothing is happening and the entire screen is blank, then the user doesn't know something is happening. So when your app is loading, there's an opportunity to delight, or an OTD. Here's another way to think about it. When data is loading, sometimes a user will click on a button or interact with your app and it needs to make an HTTP request out to the server. Well, that time is actually unpredictable. And while you're waiting for the user, again, they may not know something's happening. What is that? It's an opportunity to delight your user. Think about those applications where an animation or some type of visual cue let you know that things are happening. And when it was cool, it made life even better. And here's another one that's actually really fun. And this one's called page transition. So think about when you have an application and when you go from page to page, how that page responds to going from one screen to the next. Again, all of these are places where you can delight your users. And I'm sure folks have seen this one. And if you think about menus, right? So when it comes to menus, that's also a place where you find interactions and opportunities to delight your users. Now, here's the great part of this entire story. So yes, the heir thinks that my apps are boring, but Angular can come and save the day for me. Let me tell you why. Angular has first-class support for animations. And when I say first class, it's not only that we have a robust API, it's also because we have, it's built on top of the web animations API that is supported by the major browsers. So what does that mean for you? Well, when you're developing, you don't have to worry about Angular adding any overhead because we're not re-implementing animations. We're not doing something extraneous like that. We're actually just building on top of that programmable API. So now you have a way to have really rich interactions in the Angular code that you already know how to write. So this is probably the question that's on the minds of like everybody who's watching right now. Yeah, so should we just skip CSS animations altogether now that we know that Angular, our favorite platform, has support for animations? Well, guess what? I have some really good news. Yes, you can. No, I'm just kidding. You cannot. Do not skip CSS animations. Now, let's talk about why this is the case. Usually, CSS animations can handle some very simple things that you need to do, but you want to bring in Angular animations when it's time for more complex things. For example, let's say that you're just wanting an animation to run one time. Well, if it doesn't have to be programmatic, yeah, just use CSS animations. But on the other side, when it comes to Angular animations, what if you want to actually hook into the life cycle of the animation? Maybe you want to do things when an animation starts or when an animation ends and have more finer grained control. Well, that's where Angular animations really gives you a lot of value, because you get that programmatic control that is very helpful. One example of this, I've seen this in the real world, is let's say that some long data is loading. And while that data is loading, maybe you want to transition your animations depending on the state of your data. So if you're using an observable and you're getting stream inputs, well, you can link in as you're getting stream values. You can link in right there and start interacting with those animations. So some really cool things can happen. But don't go overkill here. What you want to be sure of is that you use the right tool for the job. And as we like to say sometimes, don't use a hammer to nail in a thumbtack. You know what CSS animations are really great for? Looping, right? And that's something that Angular animations aren't really the easiest to work. There's some workarounds for, but if you want to loop an animation like continuously, like with a undefined endpoint, well, a CSS animation is going to be perfect for that, and you don't have to write any extra code in your Angular app component controller. Okay, let's talk about how animations look in your applications. First, in your component metadata, you need to have the animations property, and then you have what's called a trigger. Now, for the trigger, here's what you're going to get. You define your trigger, then you say, well, I want to have 0 or more states, and these states, let me tell you what these are. These states represent you give it a name, and then what the styles are for any element in that state. So you kind of name the state, and then you say, okay, well, if an element is in this particular state, what are the styles that should apply? So you can do that, or you can just define a transition, which could be helpful for defining the transition between two states. But here's what's really cool about a transition. This is where you actually define what the animation looks like. Because inside of your transition, you have at least one animate call. And this animate call is going to give you control over how long the animation happens, what's your delay, and if there's any easing or what the animation curve is. So should it ease out of the animation? Should it ease in? Should you have a custom Bezier curve that defines a very special animation flow, right? So you get to define all that in that animate command. And then inside the animate, you can even have some styles in there that you can apply. So this is like the overarching hierarchy of like how you design and compose your animations programmatically. And what you get with this, here's an advantage that I personally like about Angular animations versus traditional CSS animations here. With CSS animations, it can be a little bit hard to find all of the parts, because as you define your styles and you define your animations, your keyframes, etc., you know, that code doesn't really tell you, it's hard to read and tell exactly what's happening. But with the Angular animations, you get a more declarative approach where you can really read to say, oh, when you're going from this state to another state, here's the list of steps that I want you to do. And that it helps to become more readable. So let's talk about what the workflow looks like when you're animating elements, okay? First, you have your initial state. Whatever that state may be, whatever state the element may be in, you have your initial state. Then you have your end state. So what should I look like at the end of the animation? What should I look like when I start? What should it look like when I end? And in between these two states, well, this is where your animation steps kind of fit into the picture. So this is a conceptual overview of how you kind of visualize it in Angular, where you have your initial, your animation steps in between, and then you have your end state. So let's go a little bit more practical. One thing that we're going to try today together, there's this idea of a void state. Now, this is an actual state of elements in an Angular app. When I say elements, I'm talking about the DOM elements or your components that you have on screen, okay? So you can have what's called the void state. So that means you're not actually in the DOM right now. If you ever used an ngIf, you know how that goes. So if the ngIf, is false, that thing's not in the DOM, is not rendered. So those elements will be in the void state, or maybe a thing that's yet to be added. That's all in the void state so far. Okay. Then we can define like a wildcard state that says, well, if you're not on the screen and then you enter the screen, then here's the animation that I want, and then we define our animation steps. Okay, so again, this is like a higher level way I want you to think about it. And as I'm talking about this, I'm throwing out a ton of terms. So here's what I need from you. If you're at home watching, is you get that left hand in a very safe position, and watch this. Bam. That was a high five from me to you, because you are doing great. There's a lot to learn here, but you folks are doing so great. All right, now let's get into some code, because I know how developers think. I know how we think. We're just like, yeah, I mean, that's really cool, Mark, but where's the code? So let's start getting it a little bit more into the code. Here's how we have to.
I do like those slides, though. The slides make it easy to like understand how the pieces fit together, and I like it a lot.
Thank you.
I like those diagrams.
By the way, when it comes to the
You're
design,
welcome.
like the look and feel of the slides, shout out to Emma on the Angular team for this amazing work. By the way, I had to give her like, she's so good,
so cool,
so talented,
I really like her.
So the design, the way things look, a lot of value from her. Okay, so let's
Nice
look
slides,
at how
Emma.
we actually include animations in our application. If you are an Angular user who's been like using the platform for a while, you may remember that in the earlier iterations that the Angular animation functions came from a different part. They were originally in core, then we moved them out. So what you need to do is import your browser animations module in your app module TypeScript file. All right, so all your other code's going to look the same. This is the only change you need to do in this file. So you have, once you put it in your imports, now your app will know how to deal with animations, which is really working in our favor. And then next, let's jump into actually some code here. So I'm going to jump into some code so we can look at how this is working. Oh, that looks really tiny. You don't really have to see it. Okay, that looks good. Look at that. All right, so if we go to my app.module.ts, okay, so as you see, here's my animation module. That looks pretty good. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, and then I just imported it, so we are like ready to go there. So let's have a look in one of my components. So I have a component called my box demo, and we're going to see how this all works. Now, here is my actual template code. I feel like I want it just a little bit bigger. Okay. I like it so big that people don't have to squint to look at the screen when they're watching a presentation. So I like my code super large there. I'm going to do an ng-serve as that's going. So now while that's spinning up, let's see what we have here. We just have an article and a class of box. So there's not any magic here. And I'm going to go into the CSS so you can see how I'm doing things. Okay, so we have this class of box, which I'm defining the height, background color, border radius, etc. So you can get a feel for what the box is going to look like, but no animations here. So there's no sleight of hand where I'll show you an animation, but it'll really be CSS. It's no sleight of hand here. Okay. Now in my component, yeah, not a lot happening yet, but we're going to make all that magic happen. Let's make sure that we go to our app here. And then if we refresh, let's reload. Okay, let's make sure that everything is up and running. Come on, ng-serve. There we go. I think I'm really taxing my machine, so my ng-serve is running a little bit slower than I want, but what are you going to do? This is what I love about live demos, because I like to show people that, like, no matter where you are, live demos are unpredictable, and the things that you did 1,000 times, even for us, like people who are like presenters or like Googlers, whatever, this type of stuff happens to everybody. So if you're out there, I want you to remember, it's all good. It's all good. Stuff happens, and you just keep working through it, okay? So we should be pretty close to running if my computer, something on my computer is really like being taxed. So I'm going to try an alternative while we try to get that working, okay? Because I don't want to give up.
Well, you're not the only one. I think on last Tuesday, Sander asked me to present something, And I had similar things that it didn't work exactly on the show.
Oh, and so I'll tell you folks a really fun story. One time I was giving a talk and I had a syntax error, and it took me about 5.5 minutes to figure it out. And it was a very simple error, but in the middle of the presentation, it was 5.5 minutes of me trying to debug. And there's a lot of pressure.
It's really hard to focus when everybody's looking.
It's so hard, and it's hard to type when people are looking. Okay, so this should be going pretty soon. This is not a reflection of the Angular NG server. I promise you, this is a reflection of my computer only. I don't want anybody looking at this and thinking like, "Oh wow, yeah, I'm not using Angular."
Perhaps
I love this new output.
This is Angular 11, version 11, which is how you get this, as Bonnie called out, this fancy output. Look at this. This is one of the cool features that you'll get from the upgrades to the CLI. That nicely formatted output in the CLI log is super helpful. Okay.
It's very aesthetically pleasing.
There we go. Now we're back in the building. All right, friends, you see that? Now I'm going to give myself a high five for getting through that. Good job, Mark. You did great. Okay, awesome. So we just have our box. Now, as you know, the error would already tell you. He say what? This is boring. All right, so let's figure out how can we animate this box. One thing that's really aesthetically pleasing for people is when things fade into the screen. People really like when things fade in. So let's walk through an example of how we can take our boring box and actually make it fade in. Now, to get started with that, here's my component metadata. The first thing I'm going to need to do here is add my animations property. Okay, so I have my animations. And what did I say comes next? So if you remember my picture, go back just a few steps. Okay, first thing is what? The trigger. So that way we don't lose track of our path. We need to add the trigger. So I'm going to add a trigger right here. And then I need to import trigger from Angular animation. Okay, so if we look at the top, so now we have trigger imported. And here's what a trigger takes. You give it a name. So we'll call this one like fade. We'll call it fade in to be very clear here. Then you have to give it an array, which is going to be the next step. So if we look at what comes next, it's going to be state or a transition. State or transition. Okay, so I'm going to do transition next, and it'll make more sense as this story unfolds. So if we do a transition, I want to say, remember what I said, void is that state of I don't exist on the screen. I'm not in the DOM at all. So we have void. So we're going to start at void because when our box appears, that means it's been added to the DOM. So we want to look very nice. And the way you say what the direction is, you use this nice little arrow, so equal signs and greater than. And then we'll use wildcard because we don't have any other states to worry about. So we're going to say, yeah, when you don't exist and then you get added to the screen, here's what it should look like. All right, fantastic. What needs to go inside our transition? Let's look at our roadmap again. We need to add an animate, right? We need to add an animate here. So let's do that. And we need to bring in transition. So I'm going to go up to trigger, and I want to also bring in transition. And I'll bring in animate because I know that's what's next. Okay, very fun. So now that we have this set up, we are ready to cook. I just want to say, I want you to animate over, let's say, 5 seconds is a long time. Okay, IntelliSense, excuse me. Out of the way, please. Thank you. Okay. Keyboard, strokes, work. Thank you. All right. So you can pass a lot of, well, not a lot. You have a few variations that you can use here. I can give it an integer and just give it a time in milliseconds. So I could say 2000 milliseconds is a time for the animation right here. So that's where I could start with. Or I can give it a string, which gives it more control. But here's what we need to figure out what happens next. Well, I need to give you a place to start. So we need to add one more thing. Style. And so here's how that fits into the picture. When you trigger this transition, so here's how it reads. My animation is going to be called fade in. My transition says when you go from void to any state on the screen, here's the style that I want you to have when we do this, when you hit this transition. The style, and you represent it as an object, okay? And when you represent it as an object, you use the properties that you have available in CSS. Here's the only difference. In CSS, I would do background color, for example. That's not valid property syntax, right? So I need to do camel case. And then we're back in the building. Awesome. But I don't want to do that. I want to do opacity here. I want to show you folks some difference. So we do opacity. Now with the opacity, what do I want it to be to start off? 0. And then I just save. Now, this is a nice declarative way to see the transition, because I feel like when reading this, anybody can see it and understand what's happening next. When you transition from void to any state, the style you're going to start at is opacity 0, and you're going to animate to 2000. Over 2000 milliseconds. But you may be asking, well, Mark, how do I know what it's going to be at the end? That's the beautiful part about the way the animations API works. If you don't specify like an end state that has styles associated with it, it's going to go to the default, not the default, but to the defined styles that are defined for that element. So we saw our box styles. So here's where it's going to end up. If you look here, we're going to end up with these styles associated with it. That's where we're going to end up. Okay, friends, let's keep this party going. We are cooking with gas. Are y'all ready for this? Because I feel like this is a straight up party. Okay.
Hey, Mark, I just want to jump in and tell you that the comments in the chat, they really like your presentation.
Thank you.
Don't let it go to your head. I know. Let's not get mushy here.
Oh my gosh, let's go. See, now I'm excited. All right, let me stay on track. Thank you folks so much for that. I'm so grateful that you're having a good time. All right, so now.
And he animated out.
See, we shouldn't have stopped him.
No. Oh, he's back.
Now what do we do?
Here
were
he
so
is.
worried.
Great
we really
experience
need you for this, Mark.
Yeah, great fade out. It wasn't a fade in, but it wasn't fade out. I loved it, actually. I really liked
said
it.
you animated yourself right out.
Okay, just for clarification, what happened in that moment? I hit refresh on the StreamYard window. Oh man. Woo! Okay, so one thing I could do if I really wanted to, one of the cool features that we added for Angular and Angular version 11 is support for HMR. So right now I'm doing these manual refreshes, but if I had enabled HMR, it would apply my styles and any like form data that I had already entered, and it would rebuild my component. So I will probably do that next time instead of refreshing myself. So thank you for this is
you're doing great.
Okay.
You're doing great, and everybody's having fun. We got a lot of comments that everybody's having fun around this, so let's go for it. I shared your screen already.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm having a blast. All right, so let's reload this, and it should. Okay, so our style is not taking place because there might be an error in something. So let's figure out why. Oh, Okay. Here's the thing that I didn't do, and I bet you Angular fancy people out there already saw it. How would my box know to apply this animation? I haven't done anything to link the actual animation to any element. So let's make that change. And then we'll be right back where we want to be. Oops, not in the CSS, excuse me. In the HTML, let's do this. So here's how you link it. You just have to say @ and then the animation name. Okay, so now the box it'll be bound to this animation. And here's what I really love about this. I currently have this animation on the div in my screen, but I could put it anywhere technically. Now let's reload. There it is. Okay, now it's coming through. Okay. If you can see that little majestic reload, it's very subtle, but that's not the end of the story. So now we have our animation running as soon as the thing enters. Let's elevate this a bit. You know what people also love is movement. Movement goes so far in animations. So let's do a transform. And then here's what we'll apply. So we're going to say translate Y, and then I'm going to say, let's go negative, let's say 200. That's negative 2000. That'll never show up on the screen. All right, let's say translate Y. So this looks a lot like your CSS code. When you're writing your CSS styles, this looks a lot like that. So now we're going to save it. And then when we reload, update for me. Come on, you got this. Is my transform not a valid? Is my translate Y not correct? Let me just make sure that I have the right stuff in here. Okay. There we go. I didn't put the pixel, so it didn't do it. Okay, there you go. So now, I mean, that looks okay, but that's like super slow. So now this is where the art comes in. So we've set up our structure, right? We set up our structure of our animation, and we can just really update this to make it better by fine-tuning things. So let's go back to our animate. We have it over 2,000 milliseconds. That's really slow. That's 2 whole seconds. So here's how we can solve for that. Let's say 500 milliseconds, and we do 500 milliseconds. So I switched from integer to actual string. Now, that way I can provide more details, okay? So this is how long it should take. Then we can decide what the delay is. We'll skip the delay right now, but you know what I am going to do? I'm going to say I want you to ease in. So now we'll get a less linear. So the ease in it shows how the animation will take place over time. If you don't provide anything, it's linear, right? So the speed of it still the same duration, but it'll just go straight down. But an ease in will be like, oh, a little slow and then speed up a little bit. So that's how you get those nice polished touches here. So now we can see it's a little bit faster, a little bit less, right? Or I can do an ease out, and I think that's going to look nice. And then here's what you end up with is just a nice little like animation. See, it's just kind of like a smooth little fade in. Looks like and you know what this is actually modeled after now? Kind of looks like a notification. So let me show you how we can convert this to a notification. So if we go back to our original style, instead of it being so tall, so we have the height being, let's say, height of 200 pixels. If we change this to 50, refresh this. Now, oh, did y'all see that notification coming in? I don't think you believe me yet. Let me show you how we just built the notification animation. I tricked you. This entire time you thought we were just going to have a box. The error would have told me that was boring. So if I do an H1,
okay. Now that's cool.
All right, so I have one of these too many. And maybe it should be an H2 because this line wrapping doesn't look as smooth. Okay, now. All right, so now I've built like a very basic notification animation, right? And so this is all declarative. And now I have control over it too. So I can have control over when this happens. You probably want to know what that looks like, don't you? Well, we can get there. Okay. So that's the first part of like how the animations actually work. So this is an animation that just happens without any type of interaction. This is just being loaded onto the screen. But there's still one more part. And let me know if I'm running out of time because I see that I'm going a little long. So
do we have a hard stop, Jeffrey?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm all in.
All right. I'll
Nobody's going anywhere.
I'll go for a few more minutes and then I'll leave some time for some questions.
It's good.
All right. Sounds good. Now, this syntax is super great. Like, I love it. It's cool, but you know how we are at Angular. Like, you already know, like, a lot of our updates are around making your developer experience and productivity, like, better. So, you know, we did something else. You can describe this behavior from void to any state on the screen. You can describe that as probably it entering the screen. Okay, so we have an alias that says, so when the element enters the screen, we can apply the fade in. So then that's a nice little alias for you. And
now that alias picks up on, so if you're using like an ng if statement and you put that alias in, then it's going to know, like you put the at fade in and then the alias, and then you don't have to change the state. It'll just pick up that for you.
Let's prove that. But that's exactly right. But let's show how that will work. So now I'm going to add two things to the screen. Let's do this. Let's add a button. Now, this is not pre-rehearsed. Bonnie didn't talk to me beforehand and ask me that question. So we're going to make this happen right now together. So we're going to say, so let's do this. Let's say declare. Let's say declare. We're going to declare something on the screen, okay? And then this is going to be a button. We're going to call it, we'll just say click. And on click, we'll say show. Or here, I'll make it even easier. So we don't have to go through adding too many elements. We'll just say show notification. Notification equals true, right? So a little micro syntax for us right there. But I need to define this so it can show up, right? Because it's going to blow up right now. So let's fix that. Okay, awesome. So inside of my component, I'm just going to drop this in. This is a Boolean, and then we'll just say it equals false at first. Okay, cool. Now let's go back to the ngIf question, right? Because that was the question. So now we have something that we can control to say ngIf. Okay, here we go. I will do my ngIf here. Show notification. Okay, I don't want to misspell it and waste our time. Awesome. So if everything works, our notification should show up. And so should our button. Okay, there's our button. And then we declare, notification shows up. So it triggered it. So to answer Bonnie's question, yes, it caught because of the ngIf, when it rendered the element when the declare became true, it just rendered this thing for us. Now, if we want to look nice, of course, I could set the position to be absolute so we could hover technically over and not shift the UI. But this was a live question to kind of prove this. But this is just the beginning of what we can do with animations. This is just the beginning. We could also do, remember I talked about, here, I'm going to go back. Remember I mentioned that we could have states or a transition. Here's what we can also do. Let's go back to the trigger and let's define a state. In this state, we're just going to call it red. And then we'll provide a style here. Do I put a style in here? I think I put a style in here. I think. I'm going to have to remember this part. All right, 1 second. Okay, let's make sure we bring in state as well. Okay. So we have this state, which is going to be able to define. This is what we're going to use to define if you enter the red state, here are the styles that should happen. I'm going to make this quick and just say background color equals, oops, not equals. That wouldn't have worked at all. Okay. Background color is red. So now I can define a new transition. I can say that if I'm going to transition from, let's say, any state on the app for now. And here's the other thing about the wildcard that's going to really help us. The wildcard allows us to say, even if there's a state that we haven't defined, so we can say foo state, whatever state it is, it doesn't need to exist, which is going to help you because maybe you just don't care where the animation starts from. You just care that it happens. So that any state's going to help us here. Now, if I go from any state to my red state, so these two have to match. You see that? These two have to match. Let me define what it's going to look like. Okay. All I want to happen is I will animate over, I'll just say it'll take, 500 milliseconds to do this. And then let's just make a quick button that will trigger this state. So we have to set this part to happen. So before we go there, we can just say current state, which is a string. And we don't have to give it anything right now. Let's just be empty. Oh, wait, don't attack me. I'm doing something really bad here. If I have my linting going on, you see all my mixed, quotes here. Yeah.
I just want to say that it is very hard to talk and live code at the same time, and you are killing it. Even with all these crazy parentheses or quotes you got there.
I just want somebody to see this and say, what? He works at Google and he can't even be consistent with his quotes. So I want to make sure that I, represent the people. Look at that.
We were about to call you out.
Right. That's just coming out.
We won't misquote you.
Oh, that was so good because of how painful that was. Like, that was so good. I love it. All right, cool. So here we are. We have our current state. I want to wrap this up with this one, and then I'll show you one really cool demo, and we'll wrap it up. But this is going to be really fun. So we have our current state. Now, here's what else I can do. I have my fade in, which is on entry. Now I can have my red state. So you combine multiple. But, here's what I need to be able to do. I want to, oh, not red state, excuse me. Wait. What did I call that one? 1 second, folks. I don't want to, it needs to be the name of my transition. So wait, okay. We actually need to do something a little different here. Let me move this code out because yeah, it would have done multiple things. So we need to make a new trigger. There we go. And we'll call this one change color. There we go, folks. Yeah. All right. So we're going to make a new trigger, call it change color. And that same work we just did. So when I go back to my template, I'm in my template. We're going to say change color. But how do I get the change color from the other one? It was when something entered. This one, and I'm going to show you how you can have more control. Here, we're going to do what I call an apple in a box. You know how you have banana in a box for two-way binding? I'll call this an apple in a box. I don't know if that's going to stick. I'm trying to make it happen, right? But because you have to have the @ sign and then you have your box for your binding. And what we're going to have this be bound to is the value of, you can guess in the chat, it should be the value of current state. Okay, so whatever that current state is, it'll be fed to my trigger, and then it can choose where to go from there. That's really fun. And the only thing we need now is one more button. Well, we don't have any buttons now. Okay, one more button. And then instead, we'll say current state. And now here we have to actually choose a real state, right? We can't just make one up here. We have to choose a real state for it to work. So we're going to call that one red because that's the name of the state that we have defined in our component. So check this out. You see? So we're going to list that one. Let's go. I'm super excited because I feel like this is going to work. Whew. Oh, that says declare twice. That's not what we want. Because even I wouldn't know which one was which. Okay, so this one needs to be just red. We're yelling our states. Red!
We're just so excited.
Right. Okay, so first declare. Then you ready? Red, come on. Wait. Oh, you know what? I may have to restart because I did add a new trigger.
No, you just have an extra quote there after red. You see it?
I thought I needed this one.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. You do.
I need that one, but hold on. You might be on something. Let me make sure that I have. Let me see this red here. Red. Is there any? There might be an error in the console that I'm not familiar. I'm not looking at. So let me inspect real quick. Let's make sure, because we're there. We're there. We have everything set up. This is going to be like linking everything together. So we declare our change color has not been registered. That's why, because I spelled it wrong.
We never doubted you.
Thank you. I appreciate that support because I need it right now. So it is. I'm really thinking I need to restart my server, to be honest with you, because change color is, oh, maybe I didn't save my file. Could that be a thing? Okay. Yeah.
Could be.
That's life. Okay, so we got to declare to show our thing, and then there we go. Yeah.
All right.
All right, friends.
That was awesome.
So listen. So thank you. But this is just like the small part of the story. Look, I just showed you the fundamentals. Let me show you a quick demo of what is possible with Angular animations. Let me show you what's actually possible. I did not make this demo, but it is so cool that it's really worth showing. So this is. I think it's Angular animations for the win or something like that. Angular animation for the win. FTW. I think that's.
Is that Lucas and Mateus?
Yeah,
I love it.
This is such a grow, and it's worth showing it just to show people what the full power. So when you first see this demo, it's like a lot, but now that you see how it's built, we can walk through how they did it, and we all understand what happened now, right? So now we can see it. So you got like your basics. where things are showing up. So we have like our menu animations on the side here, things like that. And if you go to like the advanced, you have animations around these types of things. But let me show you what the code looks like. So here's our animation that was used to create this, but you can read this now and you know what this is doing. The first line is just defining animation. That's what that first thing is doing. Second, what comes next? We know this because if we look, we got the trigger, then a transition. So then, oh, wait, is that our friend, the enter? Is that our friend that we already know about, which means going from void state to any state? Look at that. Now, here's something that I didn't talk about, but it's still something that you can see. This is a query selector. So you're just going to check the DOM of that element that this animation is applied to. You're going to select these elements, which is a photo record. You know, this is your selector. Then you can apply your style to start with, and then you can stagger your animations. What the stagger just gives you a chance to do is, instead of doing them all in parallel, you can say, hey, do one after the other. Okay, look at this. This is super cool. And then you have your animate, which is 500 milliseconds. And I mentioned this earlier, where you can have that custom, that really custom animation curve, as opposed to just a linear one. If you have a vision, you can create that. All right, so I feel like, so we went through all this stuff. It was boring, and then we fixed it, and we found some opportunities to delight. I feel like now that you are able to use the skills that you have to really build some cool stuff. And then finally, what should you do? I want you to go and build some great apps using Angular. I want you to use Angular animations. I want you to take advantage of the CLI, take advantage of Angular version 11 that's already out, update your apps to get the really cool features. And I'll say thank you. It's been a blast, folks. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your talk. I really liked it. I liked the animations. And also on the live coding and all the things that were happening. And it was really fun.
I'm so glad you had a good time. That is my trademark. I like people to have fun when I speak because, you know, why not? Why not have fun?
Yeah.
I think that you have made good work of this opportunity to delight us.
Sounds awesome. I'm super excited about that. All right. I think I have a few minutes for questions. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I got a few minutes for some questions before my next meeting.
Okay, so I got basically, let's get one then. Basically, I've seen a lot of like animations with in the component where people just fill in a lot of animations there. Would you extract them to use them in other places? So like the fade in, for example, just extract them in a custom TypeScript file, like animations.fade in, for example, and just use it like that?
Yeah, that's actually excellent. That's exactly the answer to that question. I totally recommend that you take your, I'm not sharing my screen, but I was going to say what you can do is that entire animation that you define, that trigger, you create a new TypeScript file, just a standard kind of like TypeScript, and then you declare a constant for that animation and export it, right? Then you can use the use animation function inside your components to just do it. And what you really should do is, you know, just like anything, you can overdo it in your animations block in your metadata component. You could totally overdo it and have too much code there, right? So totally find your reusable code, or even if you just want to take all of the animations for a screen and define them separately. Sure, do that so you can just have easier readability and, you know, and your component doesn't get overgrown.
Jeffrey, Samantha actually did a talk about exactly what you just asked called reusable animations. You know Sam, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can find that somewhere on YouTube. And also, Mark, there was a comment. Jeffrey, can you put up that comment by Marion that said, just realized an empty chat can be a very good sign. No questions.
Oh, yeah, sure.
All very well put. And or we're really mesmerized with the presentation. And she said she loved it.
Thank you. That is very, very meaningful to me. I'm so glad you folks enjoyed this.
It was fun. You're always fun. I love your energy. This is what I was telling them when they booked you. I was like, you have to meet Mark Thompson. He's so fun.
So we got like one other question. Oh, sorry, Sander. And I'm just putting it on the screen from Aris. He was on our show, and I think he was last week on Angular Air. So do you have any updates for animations on the roadmap for upcoming Angular releases?
You know what? I love a clarifying question for that. Like, what type of updates are you looking for Angular animation? Because right now we don't have anything but that I can think of. But I love to hear what you're looking for so we can go back and start talking to the team about it. I mean, I think that one feature that I personally would love to see, and I'm talking to the team about, is a way to loop animations indefinitely. Is really hard to do, actually, programmatically, because then you have to do like a lot of like watching for the end and then starting it over manually. That feels really bad to me personally, right? It should be something where I can say, run this indefinitely. Like if I give you a -1 in a timing or something, that means keep doing this over and over again. So that's something I know we should add. Well, I won't say should. I can't control the entire team. One thing I would like to see added eventually. But yeah, definitely let me know what things about animations you think could be helpful for us to add so we can start talking about it.
Great. I think they can go ahead, Sander.
Mark, if I add an animation to, let's say, the app component, will it trigger on the lower components too?
Oh, good question. Good question. So if you add an animation to the app component, will it trigger the lower components? Now, I don't know. I think it will. That, but I do know we do have support for like parent and child components. If you want that type of control from like your parent to your children, we do have specific like animation functions that handle that. But I don't know about the app component. I'm going to write that down. That's a good question. I'm going to try that. Yeah, I don't know.
What I want to do is like have like a generic fade in on the app component, and then if I'm like 3-4 layers deep, can I reuse that same fade in for like something I want to fade in?
Oh yes. So if you have it like extracted, right, you can reuse that thing anywhere. So if you just don't define it,
but then I have to extract it and import it into the component.
Exactly.
I have to redefine it on the component.
But it's only one line, Sander. Once you've extracted it out into another file, and then you take that, you've already defined your animation and your trigger and everything. Then when you pull that external thing
but I'm lazy. I just want to define it once, far away, and
he just wants to put it in there.
I bet you
right on the template.
You know, I almost want to try it now to see what would happen, just to see like what happens if you put the fade in on the app component, like on the app, and then just like see what happens. I'm pretty sure
do it with the directive.
Yeah, it's just gonna fade in all the children. I'm confident about that, but the type of control you get, though, I'm not confident about the answer on the type of control that you can have after, right, from the lower components. Like, I don't know what kind of control you can have back up to the app, though.
Don't forget, Sander is our resident troublemaker.
No, it's a good question. I love the good questions because it gives me an opportunity to show that, you know, I'm human and that, you know, Googlers don't know everything. So I love people asking me hard questions, you know. So that's good. It's a great question. Parent to child. I'm right there.
Yeah. So I think we can wrap it up then. I don't see any questions anymore in the chat. So I just got like 2 things. Let me put it up on the screen. We work hard to do a Dutch Angular website where people can go. We used Scully for it. That's something from Sander, and it will always be updated. So go check it out and see what's there. And also,
Jeffrey,
I would like
real quick. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, so, what was it?
I just wanted you to flip through some of these comments just so Mark can see them real quick. Because there's so much love in the chat, and I just want you to put it up there just real quick because there's...
I can do that and talk to at the same time, so probably that will go well. Let me see. This one here. And let's have a thing about the agenda. So not next week, but the week after, we will have Katrina here from Narwhal talking about scalable... Oh, Katarina, yes. Sorry, I'm doing that always. Around scalable apps with Angular. On the 10th of December, Manfred Steyer will be here. He will talk about the micro-frontend revolution with the Webpack 5 module federation plugin that we can use. And on the 17th of December, we will have somebody from OutZero. It's called Frederik Bruik, and I hope I pronounced his name correctly. To talk about something.
German, so I think
Is he German?
I think so.
Frederik is Belgian, right? Or you mean Manfred?
Hey,
Manfred's Austrian.
Austrian, yeah.
So, and I think I had all the comments around. Thank you, Mark. I think I didn't miss anything. So let me give a small shout out. Thank you, Mark. I really loved the presentation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Can I ask
really
one?
loved it too. Thank you for the fade out mark demo. That was really, really nice.
I will use that forever now. Like every presentation, I'm just gonna like fade myself out. I was gonna say, could we share for the folks at home the YouTube link for tomorrow for the live stream? I would love for people.
Sure.
I just put it in the chat. If you just want to click on it in the chat, I just put it there.
Thank you. Yeah, we're gonna do a live stream tomorrow, so definitely set a reminder. I know it's gonna be perfect. Yeah, tomorrow.
So there it is.
It'll be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see everybody. Thank you again for having me. You people are so amazing. Invite me back. I loved hanging out with you also.
Happy to have you here. Thank you all.
We love to have you. See you.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.